Welcome. Obviously, big day tomorrow as we get started. Practice number one, and just collectively, 15 practices for spring ball for our inaugural season. Obviously, extremely excited about the chance that we get to get out and truly get an evaluation of the guys that we have on our roster right now. So, really, when we look at this thing in totality, it's 15 practices of finding out what we really have. And that's where our starting point begins. We have an idea, obviously, with the off-season workouts and the conditioning and the competitive drills that we've put these guys through, but we're nowhere near where we want to be. I told our guys, our staff this morning, you get better at football by playing football. And so in order to do that, we've got to go out and practice for 15 practices and actually do football things. And so I think with that, our overall theme is going to be, we want to see our guys compete in certain situations. We know our numbers are thin by, football standards. And so we've got to be smart how we use those competitive situations, and they will be far and few between, but there will be a lot of individual work, a lot of scenarios, competitive scenarios that maybe won't be necessarily tackled, as we would say, live, and just really get a overall evaluation of what we have here as a football team.
I know it's not even day one yet, but what's kind of on your mind? What are you going to be looking for once you guys get started tomorrow?
Well, there's a lot on my mind. How much time do you got? No, it's truly just, I think in any level of football, it starts up front. And so we've got to determine what we've got on the offensive line primarily. We know that we need to shore that up in a big way. So we've got to evaluate the guys that we have that are healthy and that can go out and practice for us. That's big. And then take a look at, we have some good numbers on the defensive side, but who we think can actually help us. So that's probably the biggest priority in my mind right now.
What are you looking for from your team these next 4 weeks? What do you expect to see from your team in these practices leading up to the spring game?
Well, we had a meeting last night, just to make sure everybody got back from spring break. And the one thing that I said to them is, in order to be a good football team, there's nothing more important than practice. Like, they have to understand what practice is about, and it's really what our motto is here as a program is, we say it all the time, tackle the moment, but it's being in the moment, being where your 2 feet are and getting better at what you're doing. And the way you get better at football is by practicing football. So they have to understand when they go out there that every piece of time has been thought through, has been planned, and has been organized. And so in order for them to develop and get better as football players, they have to take that time seriously, and they have to push themselves to be better in that moment.
How important are these spring practices going to be as far as evaluating maybe our quarterback going into the fall?
Well, I think just in general, I think they're critical for an evaluation of the whole team. Obviously the quarterback. Again, you start up front. And then you go as your quarterback takes you. And I think when you look at teams that have had success in the Big Sky, historically, they've had good quarterbacks. And you could probably say that for every level of football. It's important for our quarterbacks and their development and the evaluation of those guys, but it's important at every single position that we have.
I know when we last talked, you said that even though Tyler was a starter last year, that spot was kind of up for grabs. Is that still the case, or what's kind of looking like at this point?
As I told these guys, everybody's position's up for grabs. Nobody guaranteed a roster spot in the fall. You got to go earn that. This is what they did in the past is the past, and we've said it from day one. It's a new era in ISU football. You're being constantly evaluated on what you've done over the last couple of months in the weight room, in those competitive Friday situations, all of those conditioning sessions. But we're going to play the best guys that give us the best chance to win. We know Tyler's an extremely talented quarterback. Obviously, he suffered a major injury last year and didn't play very much. And obviously, I believe that was part of our team's problems last year. But he's going to have to be the best quarterback this spring and in fall to be the starter in September, and he knows that.
What have you seen in these weight rooms and Friday competitions? What have you seen that has maybe given you confidence that you like out of the team so far?
Well, I think the one thing that the guys are starting to understand the biggest thing is our younger guys, first and foremost, I would say, have shown great numbers in the weight room and attendance. They're just they've shown the process, that they understand the process. I think, as collectively, as a whole group, the thing that has stood out to me that's a positive is that these guys are starting to come together as a team and understand what it takes to be a team. We're a long way from fully understanding that, but they're making strides every day in that department. So that's positive.
With bringing in Nick Alamalo, am I saying that right? Okay.
Yeah.
With bringing him in, what was that process like, and what have you kind of got from him so far?
Yeah, well, everybody that we bring in here to be a part of this program, as long as I'm here, has got to help us get better. And so Coach Mazzoni and Nick had worked together briefly at Arizona State. And so, Taylor brought him to my attention, and, I liked his background. And so, for me, when it comes time to do that, if I don't know the guy personally, I'm going to go outside the box, and I'm going to find guys that aren't on his reference sheet that he worked with, and I'm going to make calls and find out, outside. They better be saying good things about you if they're on the resume, right? But it's the guys outside of that you've worked with, and it was pretty impressive. I had some pretty impressive calls. Dennis Erickson called, and he had worked with them, a couple different stops, and had great things to say about him. And I knew that was Dennis's guy. But I made calls to, Troy Taylor. When Troy was about to become the offensive coordinator at Utah, Jeremy LePan, who worked with him there, special teams guy at Sacramento State, and then Kyle Whittingham, who we worked for, directly at Utah. And all those guys said the exact same thing about Nick. And so you get a team player in Nick, a family guy who's very family oriented, but has also went to high school in Long Beach Poly, and knows the LA area, and then also was in Salt Lake City for about 5 years total and has recruited that area as well. So those will be two places that he can really help us, that we're going to try and put a dent in.
You lost a few really good leaders from your team last year in Jaden Dawson and O'Shea Trujillo on the defensive side of the ball, Tanner Connor obviously on the offensive side of the ball. It's obviously a long way to go in the offseason, but is there anybody that has stood out to you as taking on one of those leadership positions?
Yeah, I take very great pride in when I say leadership, because to me, leadership is not just a term that's slung around. Leadership is, I used to believe in my career when I was younger that you were born a leader. And I think there's some innate abilities in people that help them become, or, help them be better leaders. But I do believe it's a skill that you can acquire and become really good at. However, leadership shows its face in many different facets. And so there are guys, I'm not going to tell you right now, because I continually want to see these guys press that button. I think that, and you've heard me say this, and I'll continue to say it. When I tell you this program is ready to roll at a really high level, it will be player-led. It won't be coach-led. And those guys have to understand, buy into our program, our values, our culture. And when your players believe that and they run it and they hold the other players accountable, and when the young guys come in and they see, hey man, this is the only way that we do things here, and we better get in line or we're not going to make it, your program's on the right track. And we've got some guys working towards that, but we're a long, long way from that.
You guys have extended a few offers in the last few weeks to guys since signing day. How active have you guys been on kind of the recruiting trail, and what kind of gaps are you still looking to fill as far as positions go?
Yeah, obviously we're out there looking at 23s, right, and have put some offers out there, obviously, that I can't talk about. However, we're going to have some scholarships available for guys that we are going to sign, here in the springtime. I still anticipate a handful of guys coming in here by summer that are going to help us win football games in the fall. And, this is, obviously this program needs a lot of work, and, we're not going to shy away from that, but we're not just going to sit on our laurels and tell you, man, hey, this is a rebuilding process. It's going to take 4 years. I don't know what the time frame is. I know that when I come out to play UNLV week 1, I'm expecting to win that game. And the guys that go out on the field with me, the coaching staff, they're expecting to win that game too. And we'll expect to win every other one after that. Whether that's a reality or not, I don't know yet. But I do know this, the guys that are on this roster in the fall, make it through fall camp, and go down to play UNLV, those guys are going to be ready to win football games. And that's what our anticipation is here. We want to win them all. I know that's probably not reality, but we're not going to sit here and talk about what we can do next year to get better. It's a building process. It is a building process. But we're here to win, and we're going to try and win as many as we can from the very get-go.
Is that like the language you use with the team? Like, we're not rebuilding? 'Cause, I mean, they're not idiots. Like, they realize it's been like a tough time the last few years. But like, what's kind of the terminology you use with them in terms of not rebuilding, but also not coming off like a 10-0 year or something?
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, it's why we have TTM. Like, it's about right now. What can you do right now to get better? If I went into my off-season conditioning and told these guys, hey, we're going to go bust our tails, and hopefully we'll win 3 games next year. It's better than last year. They're not going to buy that. You know, they're training to win, and that's what I explained to them. They're putting in the work to reap the rewards this fall, not 2 falls for now. You know, what does that say to the senior on this football team? You know, you can't do that, but we have to have a very honest conversation. These are the things that you have to do to give us a chance to win football games. You know, I've spent a ton of time watching, you know, us play last year, especially in the last month and a half. And I mean, you start looking at games. I mean, obviously we win the Davis game. You know, Idaho's end of the season, both coaches are fired at that point. Could have gone any way. You know, it was a dumpster fire, you know, lack of a better term, right? Both coaches fired, and the players are really playing for pride. It's a 2-score game. Could have gone really either way, in my opinion. You look at Cal Poly, get the punt that hits him on the head. They recover, kick the field goal, game's tied, win the game. That could have gone either way. You know, you look at Sac State, another game that was close. So you start looking at that and saying, well, is this really a 1-win football team? You are what your record says you are, right? But, you know, that's not the approach that we're taking. Our approach is to prepare and go out, like I said, and these guys understand, like, hey, you know, there's no more important time than the present. And so that's where we emphasize more than anything the TTM, because it's about how much better we can get right now and stack those days all the way until we get to, you know, that first game in September. And that's what we talk about every single day.
Did you coin that phrase, or like where'd that come from?
Yeah, I made it up.
Oh, okay.
I actually spent time, you know, I bought all the rights, like, you know, so you go to GoDaddy, I own it all. And investment. I just look, I knew at some point I was going to be a head coach, and I understood, like, I believe in what TTM is. I have I could go down a bunch of different avenues with you. At some point as we develop the program, we get into, you know, clocks, you know, and the numbers numbered a certain way that represent certain times on the clock during certain periods of the day. You know, there's so many facets of this, but, you know, and it all stemmed from back about 10 years ago. I started when we were at Chaparral High School. We stole Win the Day. And that was back in 2007, a little further back. And we used that for a couple of years. And then as the technology and things progressed, I realized like a day for these kids is the equivalent of like a dog year. Man, like they're sucking out of a fire hose. There's so much coming at them every single day that, you know what, we need to simplify this thing. Obviously, tackle's a play on words, but they need to understand, you know, you make 31,000 conscious and unconscious decisions a day. I've done a lot of research and studying on this. I spent a lot of my time in the development phase of this, is that how many of those decisions can you make that it benefits you as a person, you know, every facet of your life. And if you can stack those on top of each other and truly do that, you're going to put yourself in position to have success no matter what you want to do. And so that's what it's really all about, and we'll say it a lot, and it's not just lip service. It's something that we believe in, and we'll continue to press upon them as long as I'm here.
Coach, you had the chance to install some stuff both sides of the ball, but obviously on air, like half speed. What are you hoping to see with pads on and everyone going full speed?
You know, I told this to the guys yesterday. Most teams in college football at every level lose games, meaning they don't win games more than they lose games. They end up beating themselves, right? And when I sat down with President Satterley, I said, you know, what's your team going to be known for? Smart and tough. what I want to see our guys line up and do is line up in the right formation. Don't jump off sides. Defensively, line up in the right formation, understand where your fits are, play the proper coverage. If you're a receiver, run the right route. If you're a back, take the right footwork to go to the right hole. Those are the things that I want to see in these first couple of weeks. It's not so much, we'll get to the big picture things, but we've got to, again, evaluate who we are, what we are, and the biggest thing is we got to be able to line up and execute fundamental football. And then once we see what we've got from a team standpoint, and then we add the pieces this spring, summer, then we'll start, expanding our repertoire. But, we can't get into all the fancy stuff until we know what we can do from just a basic football standpoint. And if anyone sat in here and told you anything different, they'd be lying. We've got to find out, just bottom line, what do we have and what can we hang our hat on for the fall.
So you guys will be tackling a whole bunch this spring practices, I guess, because of low numbers, what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna pick and choose our moments to do that, probably on those Saturdays. But it's not going to be, a ton of, it'll be short, intermittent spots. We've got, I told these guys yesterday, the great teams know how to practice. Right? And so, these guys got to understand how to practice. This is something I thought Justin Wilcox did a fabulous job with at Cal, was teaching our football team how to practice. And I said to our team yesterday, if you went to an NFL OTA and we watched it, what's the number one thing you would see? And somebody answered, and they raised their hand, they said, nobody would be on the ground. And I said, that's exactly right, because they're skilled athletes that understand how to practice, and they understand when it's time to go in those tackle situations, and they execute at a high level. Good teams stay off the ground. Obviously, you got to get better athletes to do that, and continue to enhance your athleticism, but you got to understand how to practice. And so that requires a few things, understanding the tempos. We have 3 tempos that we'll always practice to, and every practice will be set to a certain tempo. So in other words, like tomorrow, you come out and watch us practice, we got a helmet practice. It's what we call ghost tempo. And ghost tempos, everybody's getting their work. If I'm a DB, I'm working on my back pedal and the receiver runs an out route on me, I break on that out route. I could pick the ball. I'm not going to pick the ball. I'm going to come out of my break. I'm going to let the receiver catch the ball, and then I'm going to run by him. Because I'm getting my work, he's getting his work. Situations like that. Everybody gets their work in ghost tempo. And then we have thud tempo, where we'd be more in shoulder pads and helmets. We might be in full sometimes and be thud. And those are going to be more like the first guy that gets to the ball, carry on defense, boom, it's going to wrap him, thud him up, and then let him go. The running back's going to finish through the defense about 10 yards, and he's done. And everybody else will kind of tag off from there. That's our thud tempo, and then our third tempo would be live tempo. And from that, obviously, it's self-explanatory. Live, we're gonna tackle to the ground.